My life was completely ruined. I had just gotten home from work when my wife of 12 years, Lisa, started yelling at me. I was afraid of this moment, but I knew that one day it would come. The truth is, my wife had every right to be angry with me. I cheated on her, but in my defense, she cheated on me too. And her cheating started at least 6 months before mine. And although I had known about Lisa's infidelity for many years, apparently she had only now learned about mine. As soon as I opened the front door, Lisa screamed at the top of her lungs, "You fucking pig!" From that moment on, the conversation went downhill. In fact, when I think back on that conversation, Lisa's opening statement was the kindest thing she said about me during her tirade. Although I only caught every third word, it was very clear that Lisa had discovered that I had a special friend, and she was not very pleased. Even if I could get a word in edgewise, I couldn't think of anything to say to defuse the situation. So, I just stood there, staring at the floor, trying to figure out what the best escape route would be if Lisa got violent. Finally, when Lisa calmed down, she said, "Well, what can you say in your defense? Why don't I just file for divorce?" "Well, for starters," I said softly, "I know you've been having an affair for the last 9 years, so I agree we should probably get a divorce." "What? What are you talking about?" Lisa was stunned, and the color drained from her face. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a few photographs, which I gave to Lisa. These were photographs of her infidelity. I wasn't sure what to expect, but what I received completely surprised me. I must explain that Lisa is incredibly rich and can send an army of lawyers against me. And instead of the outburst of anger that I expected, Lisa dropped the photographs and began to sob. She then looked at me with an expression of complete agony and loss. What she said next completely stunned me. "I don't want a divorce. I love you." She then ran into our bedroom. Her reaction stunned me and left me even more confused than usual. Lisa is the most beautiful woman I have ever known. I never expected, not even in my wildest imagination, that we would ever end up together. And when we got married, I expected Lisa to get tired of our relationship and kick me to the curb within a year or two. One of the peculiarities of our marriage was that Lisa's family was incredibly rich and insisted on a prenuptial agreement. I, of course, agreed. However, one point almost made me quit. Lisa insisted that the prenuptial agreement specify that there would be no children in this marriage, and I eventually agreed. I thought long and hard about this point, but by that time, I was already hopelessly in love with Lisa. I guess I should give a little background on all this. Lisa Gravois is my wife. My name is David Todman. Obviously, my wife didn't take my last name. In short, Lisa's family owns one of the most exclusive perfume companies in the world, and the family name is a brand. And since Lisa is a co-owner of Gravois Scents, it made sense for her to keep her maiden name. I wasn't crazy about the idea at first, but over the years I've come to really like it. Since Lisa kept her last name and I kept mine, many people don't realize that we are married. This gives me a certain degree of anonymity. When we got married, I couldn't believe Lisa chose me. I mean, she was a stunning beauty, and she still is. Lisa is almost 6 feet tall, has long black hair, and the deepest blue eyes you've ever seen. She has the figure of a model with fairly large breasts. In fact, Lisa even worked as a model for a while as a teenager. I'm not a bad guy myself, but I'm not a movie star. I'm an inch taller than 6 feet. I have sandy hair, and I keep myself in shape. However, Lisa was way out of my league, and I knew it. I met her at a party thrown by my college roommate and his wife in the Hamptons. He was a commodity trader and doing very well. His wife, Beth, attended Vassar with Lisa, and they were very close friends. When I was introduced to Lisa, I was very impressed, as were all the other men in the room. I mean, she just radiates sexiness and beauty. All the single guys and most of the married guys were drooling over her. But like I said, she was out of my league, so I started chatting with the other single women in the room. I have a friend who once told me to only date girls in my league, or even in the lower league. Otherwise, you would have wasted your evening talking to a woman who was about to leave with someone else. I know this sounds like a chicken shit dating philosophy, and I don't fully subscribe to it. However, I admit that I practice a modified version. I simply categorize women based on whether I feel they are in my league or not. Why should I waste my time on a girl who will still refuse me? I think you need to be realistic. The only exception is if there is a girl who is clearly out of my league, but is known for her easy behavior. Well, then you can try. However, every time I looked back on that particular night, Lisa always seemed to be there with me. The first few times I chalked it up to coincidence, but by the fourth time it became clear that Lisa was interested in me. I was flattered, but at the same time felt awkward. I decided that she was just a party girl, and when she got tired of me, she would throw me back. I wasn't interested in being someone's pet project for a month. Maybe that was her plan, but I didn't discuss it. And yet, after that party, Lisa began to stalk me. Like I said, I'm a nice guy, but what the hell did Lisa Gravois want with me? I was just a software salesman. Don't get me wrong, I'm a damn good software salesman. And after just 4 years at the same company, I became one of the senior sales directors with a salary in the 5-figure range. But these are mere trifles compared to what Lisa has. Her salary, excluding bonuses, is $40 million a year. So, I think you can see why I thought Lisa was just playing with me. Perhaps my disinterest spurred Lisa on, and in the end, she achieved her goal. It took her 4 weeks to convince me to go on a date with her. It was 6 months before we slept together, and a little over a year before we got married. It was an outrageously extravagant wedding. There were 600 guests, and I later learned that it cost about $6 million. But this is chicken feed for one of the heirs to the Gravois fortune. Of course, her family insisted that I sign a prenuptial agreement. I know Lisa was embarrassed to ask me this, but I had no objections. I understood the need to have one. And besides, I made good money myself, so I didn't care about her money. However, when I agreed to sign the contract, Lisa was as happy as could be. She told me that her family would disown her if she married me without an agreement. But according to Lisa, she was going to marry me no matter what. Still, I couldn't help but wonder how long this marriage would last. According to the prenuptial agreement, if we divorce before 3 years, I will only receive $500,000. It completely stunned me. I've never heard of anyone putting only before $500,000. But then it got even better. Each year that we remained married for 3 years, I received an additional $500,000, or a prorated share for the percentage of the year that we were still husband and wife. In the event of a divorce, Lisa could not make any claims to my property. On the other hand, I also could not make any claim to any of her assets. But the best part of the whole agreement was that I slept with the most beautiful woman in the world, and if she kicked me to the curb, I would get at least $500,000. Of course, the marriage contract stated that we both agreed not to have children. While I finally agreed to this condition, Lisa's parents were strongly unhappy with the clause that there would be no children. But Lisa did not have a close relationship with her parents. Apparently, she only saw them during board meetings, and she claimed that they liked her brothers more than they liked her. Besides, she already had a battle over not having children with them years ago. It's no surprise that we've seen very little of her parents over the years, and when they did come to visit, it was very awkward, especially for me, because they looked at me as something dirtier than swamp mud. I have to say that the first 3 years of marriage were truly wonderful. I truly believe that she truly loved me during those blissful years. But shortly after our 3rd anniversary, I discovered that Lisa was cheating on me. Our marriage was truly unconventional. Lisa traveled a lot while working for the company. I would say she was gone for about a week out of every month. And in the early years, I traveled with her as often as I could. Sometimes she stayed at home for 5 or 6 weeks at a time, but this was rare. However, whenever she came home, she would literally wear me down in the bedroom. My discovery of Lisa's betrayal began with a photograph in the newspaper. Because of her fame, Lisa is often mentioned or depicted in gossip pages. So, I faithfully looked through this section of the newspaper every day. One particular day, I just looked at a photo from a party in Paris and almost missed it. Eventually, it took a magnifying glass to confirm what I thought the picture was. On the right side of this particular photo, I saw someone who looked like Lisa. Using a magnifying glass, I confirmed this. So you're probably asking, what's the big deal? This was a big deal because at that particular moment, Lisa was supposed to be in Japan negotiating something for the company. However, there could be many reasons why Lisa ended up in Paris. But I couldn't think of a reason why she changed her trip and didn't tell me. Still, I needed to know more. It could have been a simple last-minute mistake in her schedule, but I had to find out what was going on. When we first got married, Lisa asked me to quit my job so I could travel with her. But I said that I don't want to live at her expense. Eventually, she stopped asking me for it. One of the things about marrying into a family like Lisa's is that you have almost unlimited resources. However, I didn't want to use any of Lisa's money because I knew she was very meticulous and would find out if I did. But I had my own checking account into which my salary was deposited. I mainly used this money to buy Lisa birthday and Christmas gifts. This is not an easy task when you are buying for someone who has everything. This unsettled me, and I could neither sleep nor eat. I had to know what was going on, so I used my personal funds and hired a PI firm. And yet, even as I did this, I had to be careful. I chose an investigative firm that I knew Gravois had never used before, a reputable firm in St. Louis. After I discovered the photo in the newspaper, I realized that Lisa's schedule required her to travel much more than when we first got married. With the new schedule, she was away an average of 2 weeks out of every month. However, I was confused because our sex life was still great. Lisa always seemed genuinely sad when she had to travel, and very happy when she returned. I almost convinced myself that I was paranoid. Anyway, a month later, I learned that I wasn't paranoid. I received a report with pictures, and it was fucking painful. I have never experienced such pain. The private investigator's report indicated that Lisa's lover was Gerard Lovell, whose family was in the banking business. They owned banks throughout Europe, and Gerard was president of the family holding company. Lisa and Gerard grew up together, and at one time, everyone thought they would get married. But then Gerard and Lisa broke up. Lisa married me, and Gerard married a Greek woman named Teresa Apopoulos. Teresa's father was very interested in shipping. Gerard and Teresa had 3 children. According to the private investigator's report, Gerard and Lisa broke up because he wanted children and Lisa was adamant that she didn't want to have them. Apparently, Gerard's family threatened to disinherit him if he agreed to Lisa's demand. Then I read in the report that Gerard's wife had died 6 months earlier, so now Gerard was free to be with Lisa. I walked around in a panic for 5 days, trying to figure out what was happening. Apparently, Gerard was Lisa's first love, and they apparently rekindled their relationship. I didn't understand why Lisa didn't file for divorce. In fact, I was completely confused because every time Lisa came home, she smothered me with love. If I didn't know everything about her, I would swear that this woman loved only me. Not only did Lisa seem genuinely excited to see me, but our lovemaking was amazing. You start to realize how fucked up my life was, but things were about to get worse. My first reaction to the private investigator's report was to confront Lisa and divorce her. But I thought long and hard about it and came up with 3 reasons that kept me from doing anything. First of all, I still loved Lisa, and when we were together, I felt that she really loved me. Secondly, the sex was mind-blowing, and finally, the marriage contract. From a purely selfish standpoint, I made $1,070 for every day I remained married to Lisa. I finally decided what I was going to do after Lisa tried to destroy me with sex before going on another trip. In my mind, I said, screw this. I'll stay married, but I won't be faithful. Even after making this decision, I had serious doubts about whether I could really go through with cheating on Lisa. One day, as I was pondering my dilemma, one of my saleswomen poked her head into my office. Her name was Thelma Johnson, and she was quite an attractive woman. However, Thelma wasn't even close to Lisa's level, but she had a hot body and a warm and friendly personality. Where Thelma was a solid 812, Lisa was an 11 or 12. "David, you've been distracted all week," she told me. "Is there anything I can do to help?" I really liked Thelma, and she was a great saleswoman. She recently divorced her husband after she caught him cheating on the postwoman on the kitchen table. Needless to say, in addition to the divorce, Thelma received a new kitchen table. I was surprised that she wasn't as upset about the divorce as I thought. This wasn't the first time she caught her husband with another woman. Thelma worked closely with me for over 6 months to secure the contract with Harris Enterprise. This contract provided us with bonuses for the whole year. I knew Thelma cared about me, but we always maintained a professional relationship. However, Thelma was a good listener, so I decided to get her opinion on my dilemma with Lisa. Yes, I admitted. I got distracted. I just found out that Lisa is cheating on me. The question I'm racking my brain over is, should I divorce her or ignore it? That shouldn't be a problem, Thelma said quickly. Divorce this bitch and move on. It's not as simple as it seems, I explained. I signed a prenup with Lisa. Every year I stay married to Lisa, I get $500,000. That means every day I stay married, I make about $400, and that's not chump change. Then I cataloged all the other perks you could get by staying married to Lisa. Fancy cars, parties, clothes, expensive watches, and travel on the company jet. Thelma admitted that this was indeed something that needed to be carefully considered. She promised to think about it that evening and let me know if she came up with anything. The next day I was still struggling with my problem when Thelma walked into my office and closed the door. I think I may have a solution to your problem, she said, sitting down opposite me. Really, what do you think I should do with Lisa? I asked her. I think you should stay with her, Thelma replied and continued, with a few changes. Oh, and what changes should I make? I asked, smiling. I was sure that Thelma would suggest that I stay married and just cheat on Lisa. I admit that I've been leaning more and more in this direction, but I still haven't convinced myself to go all in on the idea of cheating. Even though I still loved Lisa, her betrayal hurt me deeply, and I found it difficult to cope with. But what Thelma actually suggested shocked the hell out of me. Like I said, I think you should stay married to Lisa, but you should have your own affair. I raised my hand to stop her from speaking further. I've already thought about it. No, my plan is more complicated than just cheating, Thelma interrupted. Please let me explain and let me finish before you throw me out of your office. Okay, I said, raising my hands to her. The floor is yours. David, I believe you are struggling with this decision for 2 reasons, Thelma began. First of all, despite what Lisa did, you still love her. You can't imagine life without her. Besides, even though you've thought a lot about just having an affair of your own, it's not will satisfy you in one important aspect. You told me several times that you really want to have children. So just having affairs will not fulfill your desire. Yes, you could get your mistress pregnant, but that would be dirty and would almost certainly end your marriage to Lisa. That's all true, I interjected, but I don't see how it will help me solve the problem. I believe I can be the solution, Thelma said, smiling warmly at me. What? Are you offering to become my mistress? Technically, yes, she said with a sly smile, but I want so much more. I'm not sure I like the sound of that, I said worriedly. No, David. Let me finish. I nodded for her to continue. You knew me before you and Lisa got married, Thelma continued. I know you think Lisa married a man inferior to her, but I never looked at it that way. She's damn lucky to have you, and she's a fool to risk losing you. But since Lisa decided to be fool, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. You know, my dating history has been sad, to say the least. I always seem to end up with the worst of men. I had major insecurities even before I got married last year. I felt like Fred and I weren't right for each other, but on the outside he seemed kind and loving. It wasn't until after we got married that I learned that he was a jealous, controlling jerk, and he couldn't keep his manhood in his pants. I simply nodded and let Thelma continue. I was always attracted to you, but you never seemed interested in me. We were good friends for years, but you never thought about me in a romantic way. I came to terms with that and realized that I could never compete when Lisa appeared on the scene. But Lisa let the door open a crack, and I intend to see if I can get in before it closes. So far, Thelma's explanation had said nothing about how different her plan was from simply taking a mistress. The two things you're talking about are about Lisa and having children. You were terribly hurt by Lisa's affair and want to hit her back. At the same time, although you haven't made a big deal about it, it's clear to me that you want to have children. I can provide both. After the disaster of my marriage, I decided that I never want to get married again. However, I desperately want to have children. I offer to become your mistress and bear you children. I know you don't love me, but I think you care about me. We would keep our affair a secret, which would allow you to remain married to Lisa. At the same time, I would have your children. We would both benefit from it. I'd be lying if I didn't admit that I was shocked and intrigued by Thelma's proposal. It was complete crap, but I liked the idea. However, I could see difficulties with this agreement, so I started listing some of them. First of all, thank you for this offer, I said kindly. I am truly flattered, and this is much more generous than I have any right to expect. But I see several problems. Let me list a few of them. Finances would be a difficult issue, then raising children, the name of the children, and what if you decide in future? Do you want to get married? I was thinking about the same problems, Thelma admitted. But let me see if I can solve them. As for finances, I have my own house. All I would like to ask is that we share the expenses for all the children. I would like the birth certificates listed your last name as the father, but until you decide otherwise, they will use my last name. Even though I don't think I'll want to get married in the future, I'm wise enough to know that I'll never say never. So, I propose a written agreement. In this agreement, we include a clause that allows either of us to terminate the contract with 6 months' notice. If I remarry, you will have the right to decide the issue of custody. If you decide to end our agreement, I will get custody of the children, but you will have extensive visitation rights. Either way, you will still be recognized as the father. We sat and looked at each other, but neither of us said anything right away. Finally, I broke the silence. I must admit that I am very intrigued by your proposal. However, I am not ready to make this commitment yet. Why don't we go on a few dates to see if we are right for each other? Thelma agreed, and we started dating. The first few were just dinner and dancing. Then we had dinner and went to the theater. I found that dating Thelma was fun. She was warm and funny. It certainly was a hell of a lot better than sitting at home and waiting for Lisa to return from one of her trips. On our 5th date, we hugged tightly in the car as I drove Thelma home. After our 6th date, Thelma said, "We're definitely compatible on dates. Now let's see if we're compatible in bed." Sex with Lisa could be mind-blowing, so I didn't know what to expect from Thelma. As we undressed, I realized that Thelma, naked, had taken the seat closer to 9. Thelma was shorter than Lisa and plumper, but her body was very soft and sexy. We caressed each other from head to toe. Then we moved on to the main thing. I was hesitant at first because we didn't have any protection, but Thelma said she was still taking the pills, and we had sex. We did this twice more before I headed home. I thought I would feel guilty for cheating on Lisa, but I didn't. In fact, communicating with Thelma somewhat calmed my wounded pride. The next day, Thelma walked into my office beaming. After she closed the door, she walked around the table and gave me a searing kiss. I think after last night we know we're compatible. So, what do you want to do now? I smiled from ear to ear. Why don't you see if you can find a lawyer who has nothing to do with this company or any of Lisa's companies? Let him draw up an agreement. Then we'll see where this all goes. Thelma smiled widely. I know the perfect lawyer, my brother Tim. We're very close. He also knows I'm a little flighty, and he warned me against marrying Fred. So Thelma left, and I went back to work. As the days passed, I thought about this idea less and less. And since Thelma didn't mention it, I thought she might have changed her mind. Anyway, I didn't mean to bring this up. Besides, I was becoming more and more inclined to think that I should just divorce Lisa and deal with my financial problems. At least it wouldn't be like what happens to most husbands when they get divorced. They will end up screwing up in every possible way. In many cases, these men deserve to be fucked. but in many other cases, it is the wife who deserves to be burned to ashes. In my case, I would at least get a ton of money. Thelma walked into my office 2 weeks after our conversation and closed the door. She placed the completed agreement on my desk. Spend as much time as you want on this. Make any changes you want. If we both agree, we will sign it in front of my brother. He will have the necessary witnesses and a notary. I was surprised because Thelma hadn't said a word about the proposal since the night we were together and we hadn't had another date. I was sure that this idea was dead, but now the agreement was on my desk. It was amazing how quickly my thoughts turned to making Thelma my mistress and having children with her. Thelma's brother was very meticulous. He even raised questions that neither Thelma nor I had ever thought about. I was amazed at what would happen to the children if something happened to me or Thelma. This sight chilled me to the bone. Tim's solution was simple. If Thelma died, Tim agreed that he and his wife would raise the children if I continued to live with Lisa. If at that moment I wanted to recognize the children, I would have received them. If I decided to stay with Lisa, I would still be allowed full access to any children Thelma and I would have. And, if they didn't already know, they would be told that I am their father. If I die, the children's last names will be changed to my last name. I will leave them my property, which they will manage as a trust until they are 25 years old. I still couldn't make a decision when Lisa told me on Monday that her travel schedule would increase a bit next year. That solved everything. The next day I told Thelma to make an appointment with her brother. The meeting with Thelma's brother Tim was very businesslike. Regardless of what he personally thought about this agreement, it was clear that he loved his sister and was willing to do anything to see her happy. "David, you're one of the lucky ones, you son of a bitch," Tim said, shaking his head. "I saw pictures of your wife and she's gorgeous. And my sister is very beautiful too. God, I'm jealous." I laughed at what Tim said, but Thelma just glared at her brother. "Tim, Gloria is a beautiful woman and you're damn lucky to have her." "I know, sis, but it would be even better if my secretary was willing to make a deal like this." Tim chuckled and then said quickly, "I'm just kidding. Gloria is more than enough for me. Besides, she'd cut me some slack if I suggested something like that." This satisfied Thelma, and she smiled. We then turned our attention back to the agreement. One of the points of the agreement was that we would try to organize our sexual contacts so that they would take place when Lisa went on her trips. Of course, this had to be changed early on so that we could have sex when Thelma was most fertile. Thelma, to my delight, looked as adorable as a teddy bear that first night. Her body was sensual and warm. We were both so excited. We took our time, and by morning we were both happy and a little teary. Thelma and I maintained a completely professional relationship in the office. Thelma also told anyone who would listen that she was done dating, but intended to get pregnant artificially. 3 months after we first met, Thelma called me and told me she was pregnant. We maintained our sex life as long as possible throughout our pregnancy. When Thelma went to the hospital to give birth, I was a little upset that I couldn't be there, but we both knew that this was simply impossible when Lisa was at home. However, as soon as possible, I went to the hospital to see Thelma and my son Gavin. We agreed on a name. It belonged to her grandfather. 18 months later, Jennifer was born, and that's when Thelma asked if I would be willing to let her be a stay-at-home mom. She said she had enough money to support her for 5 years, and by then both children would be in school. I told her that I was very happy, that she would be with our children all the time. I even arranged to pay Thelma's mortgage and utilities from a fund I secretly created. As it turns out, we weren't planning on having any additional children, but one of Lisa's trips happened when Thelma was ovulating. Apparently, she got the days mixed up. Anyway, one day she called me in tears to tell me about her pregnancy. Thelma was afraid that I would be angry with her. Instead, I told her I loved her and all my children. Scotty was born while Lisa was away on a business trip, so I was able to be in the delivery room when my son was born. I was so happy that I floated on the clouds for several days. Before the birth of our third child, Thelma and I agreed that we should make sure that we did not have any more children. The question was whether I would get a vasectomy or Thelma would have her tubes tied. We decided to let the draw decide everything. This resolved itself, so Thelma had her tubes tied. As far as I could tell, life was going great until Lisa's travel schedule was suddenly interrupted. This put an end to Thelma and my plans. If Lisa wasn't running away to cheat with Gerard, I felt funny running away from cheating with Thelma. I know it's stupid, but if you think about it, our whole situation was stupid. Up until Lisa stopped traveling, she seemed happy, I was happy, and Thelma was delighted. As the weeks turned to months, both Lisa and Thelma became more and more upset with me. Lisa wanted me to spend more time with her. She said we had grown apart and she wanted to get back together. Thelma was upset and unhappy because we hadn't made love in almost 6 weeks. I still had sex with Lisa, and I felt guilty about it, so sometimes I didn't perform very well or at all. My life was completely screwed up and I didn't know what to do to unravel it. That day, I returned home to find out that Lisa had discovered that I was deceiving her. "I think you're right. We should probably get a divorce," I said, relieved that this might be the way out of my predicament. Lisa looked at me in complete shock and burst into tears. She told me she loved me and didn't want a divorce before running off to our bedroom. Her reaction took me by surprise, so I followed her to continue the discussion and found her face down on our bed, crying her eyes out. I sat down next to her and pulled her into my arms. "You were right, Lisa. We've been growing apart for years. I thought you wanted a divorce." "No, I don't want a divorce," she managed to squeeze out. "Then why did you bring this up?" I asked, completely confused. "I thought this would shock you into realizing that we need to work on our marriage," Lisa said between sobs. "Oh," I said, struggling with what to say next. "Listen, Lisa," I said, nervously running my fingers through my hair. "I've known about your affair with Gerard for years. I just thought that now you guys were ready to commit to each other." "Oh God, no," she gasped. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "I was so hurt at first that I intended to face you and ask for a divorce," I explained. "But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I would hurt myself financially. But more than that, I still loved you very much. However, I was in so much pain that I was almost ready to start divorce proceedings anyway. But then the woman in my office convinced me there was another way." Lisa struggled to process this whole situation. Until today, she never suspected that I knew about her affair, and until recently she did not even suspect about mine. "So, you have a mistress?" Lisa was crying and tears were flowing down her cheeks. "You lousy bastard! Get out and leave me alone!" This situation became more and more incredible every minute. Why the hell was she mad at me for having an affair when she had an affair before me? I decided this was a great opportunity to break away from the hasty retreat and spend some time with Thelma and the kids. This situation was so bad that I couldn't believe it could get any worse. But I was wrong. When I showed up at Thelma's, she almost attacked me. Before I could explain what was going on, she pulled me into the bedroom and we had sex twice within 15 minutes. We finally talked when Thelma came back from her pleasure and lay down next to me. "I thought you had lost interest in me," she said meekly. "Now that Lisa was there all the time, I decided that you didn't need me anymore. I was going crazy thinking about what life would be like without you." I then told Thelma about the strange conversation I had had with Lisa and her emotional outburst. This, in turn, made Thelma cry. The thoughts in my head were spinning so fast that I was starting to feel dizzy. "So why are you crying?" I asked when she finally calmed down a little. "Because it's obvious that she's still madly in love with you and will do anything to get you back and keep you." "That doesn't make any sense at all," I protested. "To begin with, Lisa told me to leave. Secondly, she happily carried on an affair for 8 or 9 years. How can she even be in love with me?" "I don't know," Thelma exclaimed. "But something has changed, and she definitely wants to leave you. It's not fair. She left you, and I want you." Nothing made sense anymore, so I kissed Thelma, made love to her again, and then went to bed. In the morning, we made love again, and I went to the office. Maybe there I can sort out the mess my life has become. But you know the expression, the best laid plans always go awry? Well, that's what happened that morning. When I arrived at work, Lisa was sitting in my office and did not look happy. "Good morning, Lisa," I said hesitantly. "I don't remember you coming to my office before. So, why are you here today?" "You know very well why I'm here." Lisa snapped at me. "We need to discuss your affair." "Okay, what do you want to discuss?" With these words, I quickly closed the door and returned to my chair. For starters, who is she? Her name is Thelma Johnson, and she used to work for me. Wait, didn't you send a private investigator to follow me or something? No, one of my friends saw you kissing in a restaurant the other day. My friend tried to follow your girlfriend after you kissed her passionately, but he lost her. Are you going to keep dating her? Oh my God, was all I could say. Well, are you going to keep dating her? Lisa, you won't like what I have to tell you, but you need to hear it. After I tell you everything, I think you'll agree that we need to get a divorce. Sadness filled Lisa's eyes, but she nodded. If only you had kept up your trips, we wouldn't be having this conversation, I began. What does my travel have to do with this? Lisa asked sharply. I told you I know about your affair, Lisa, I said sharply. I know you see Gerard on your trips. So Thelma and I got together while you were away. You know what's good for the goose is good for the gander. My attempt at a joke burst like a balloon. But, I continued, I decided that since you were having an affair, I might as well have one. I tried to limit my sexual encounters to only the times when you weren't home, but we had extra sessions when Thelma was fertile so she could get pregnant. Do you have a child? Lisa shouted, jumping to her feet. Please stop screaming and sit down, I demanded. No, Thelma and I don't have a child. We have 3 children. Before you start talking, remember that I always wanted to have children and you didn't. After several long minutes of me trying to get a response from Lisa, she said, I understand. I need to think about all this. With these words, she got up and left. I figured it would take the company lawyers a day, maybe 2, to file the divorce papers. During this time, I decided not to take the risk because Lisa was angry, so I stayed with Thelma. That night with Thelma was a welcome relief, and yes, it left me exhausted, and yes, I enjoyed every minute of it. But the next morning, Lisa called me from my office. I thought it was a courtesy call to let me know that the divorce papers were on their way. However, what Lisa had to say was the last thing I expected in this world. She wanted to meet Thelma and my children. Listen, Lisa, I took a tough position. I know you're mad at me, and we can argue about whether it's justified, but I won't let you drag my kids into this, and I definitely won't let you insult them or Thelma. David, she said calmly, I swear to all that is holy, I will not do anything to embarrass, offend, humiliate, or in any way harm your children, Thelma or you. I really want to meet your children, and I am desperate. I want to talk to Thelma. In addition, I will have a licensed nanny to watch the children while we speak. After we meet, if you want a divorce, I will honor our agreement. I thought about it a little and decided that meeting with Lisa might be the best way to get things sorted out as quickly as possible. However, if Lisa does anything to upset my children or Thelma, things will get bad quickly. Look, I have to ask Thelma, I said, but if she agrees, when and where do you want to meet? How about you come to our house at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning? Thelma was not happy about meeting Lisa. She felt that if I saw them side by side, I would understand how much better Lisa was. I just rolled my eyes and told her that would be the fastest way to end the divorce. The next day, I took Thelma and the 3 children to Lisa and I's house. I could tell Thelma was intimidated by the house and the size of the estate. The kids were excited because I told them there was a pool, a game room, and an ice cream parlor. I rang the bell instead of just entering as usual, and he was surprised when Lisa opened the door. There were at least 3 servants in the house during the day, and they usually answered the door. David, Lisa said with a smile, you don't have to ring a bell to enter your own home. I wasn't sure what kind of reception would await me, I said meekly. Lisa introduced us to a stocky, middle-aged woman who seemed quite pleasant. This is Helen, Lisa introduced the nanny. She's going to take the kids to the pool. We'll sit in the kitchen, where you can keep an eye on them too. Once in the kitchen, Lisa offered us something to drink. I was desperate for whiskey, but given what we were here for, I asked for a Pepsi. Thelma took a glass of water, and Lisa poured herself a glass of wine. I remember thinking this was unfair. If I had known there were alcoholic drinks on the menu, I would have ordered something different. Thelma, Lisa began, David told me that you guys have been together for about 8 years. As many as we could, Thelma answered nervously. David insisted that we only get together when you were on your trips. However, he would often stop by for an hour or two to spend time with the children. He always managed to be present at all the children's events. Lisa gave me a very strange look. So, were you happy with David? Do you want to find someone who could be a full-time husband? David is the best man I have ever known, Thelma declared authoritatively. He's a better part-time husband and father than I think 95% of men would be full-time. So, to answer your question, I don't want a full-time husband. I want everything David is willing to give me. I understand, Lisa said as a tear rolled down her face. She quickly wiped it away and turned to me. David, would you mind checking on your kids and leaving Thelma and I alone? I looked at Thelma, and although she was very nervous, she nodded at me. I was wearing shorts as I had taken the day off, so I kicked off my sandals and dangled my feet into the pool. I watched the children splash around and couldn't help but wish that Lisa wanted children and didn't cheat on me. From time to time, I looked back through the kitchen window. At first, it seemed like Lisa was doing all the talking. Then, Thelma spoke, and Lisa seemed to be crying. Then, they both spoke, while Thelma seemed to be writing something. Finally, I saw 2 women hugging each other and crying. Then, Lisa opened the window and asked me to come back inside. I was a little afraid to go back. Once inside, he was seated on the chair he had previously occupied. I wondered if there were more alcoholic drinks on the menu, but decided not to push my luck. David, Thelma said, taking my hand, we have come to an agreement. Okay, I said slowly. Is this something I won't like? We'll leave that up to you, Lisa said. Our agreement is to share you. I was taken by surprise. I came this morning to discuss the details of Lisa and I's divorce. Now I was told that 2 women in my life wanted to split me up. I don't know what to say about this, I said, pushing my chair back slightly. Lisa, you've been cheating on me for almost 9 years. And yes, I've been cheating on you for almost as long, but you started it. I don't understand why you don't want to be with Gerard all the time. If you divorce me, you're unable to do it. Lisa started crying, and Thelma hit me on the arm. Why did you hit me? I demanded an answer. I was even more confused and a little angry. Because Gerard is dead, Thelma said. Oh, sorry, I muttered. I did not know. David, you're right. I cheated on you, Lisa admitted. Gerard was my first love, and I couldn't forget him until I met you. He broke up with me when I told him I didn't want any children. I was crushed by his decision but refused to back down. About 3 years after we got married, I ran into Gerard on one of my trips. His wife died and he was devastated. I wanted to be there to help him through a difficult time. He really loved Teresa. One way or another, one thing led to another, and we began an affair. Yes, I really loved Gerard, but I loved you just as much as I loved him, maybe even more. During Gerard's massive heart attack, he pressured me to divorce you and married him. I said I would never leave you, because I loved you too much. Now I couldn't bear it if you left me, David, and I know that you still love me, even though you have a family with Thelma. So now you know that you can love 2 people at the same time. Now I understand that I cannot be with you all the time, but like Thelma, I want everything you can give me. I exhaled a little air and leaned back in my chair. I know this is a wet dream for a lot of guys, but everything I saw was a potential nightmare. Everything in my body screamed that 2 women wanting the same man was a recipe for disaster. I looked from Lisa to Thelma and then back to her. I saw hope and fear in both women's eyes. So, I decided to play dumb. How exactly will this work? I asked them. After I said this, Thelma took out her notepad and began looking through the schedule. The agreement was quite detailed, but the gist was that Lisa would stay in the master bedroom. Thelma and the children will have the north wing, which will have 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. I stayed with Thelma on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and with Lisa on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. On Sunday, I was free to sleep wherever I wanted. Just because I slept with one woman or another did not mean that there would be sex all the time. This will be decided between the couples. However, if one of the women decided that she did not want or could not have sex, I was not allowed to sleep with the other. There were many other rules, but this was the basic agreement. I told them I would have to think about it. I was extremely distrustful of this whole idea, but both women insisted it was either a sharing agreement or nothing. I didn't believe it. I was pretty sure that any woman would happily take me on full time. But then my mind became paranoid. What if they were serious about sharing or nothing? Could I risk losing both women? Anyway, I had to go on a trip the next day, so I told them I would give my answer when I got back. I was surprised that I could work so effectively with this monumental change in my life hanging over my head. But after I signed the contract with Stellar Enterprises and was flying home, I realized why I was able to work on this trip. I've already made my decision. I agreed to the deal. Thelma returned to her brother to draw up a new agreement. His eyes bulged when Thelma told him what was going on. After Thelma finished explaining the terms of the deal, his first comment was, "Kill me right here. David, I hate you with all my being." Of course, I knew he was joking, so I joked back. "You could still take yourself a mistress," I suggested, and immediately received a slap on the wrist from Thelma. "I wouldn't dare," Tim admitted. "Not only would Gloria cut me some off, she would force me to eat them." Even 7 months later, the agreement seemed to be working well. I can't say that my sex life is so rich, however, she has become more consistent. I have sex at least 3 times a week. But there are times when there are 4 or 5. With a nanny looking after the children, Thelma returned to work in my office. Lisa was a little annoyed at first, but she corrected the situation to her satisfaction. Lisa took Thelma away from me by hiring her at a higher salary and better benefits. Thelma now works for Lisa and seems quite happy. About a week before the 7th month, 2 women grabbed me while I was returning home from work. They explained that there was a problem with the agreement and it needed to be amended. I thought, oh my God, what now? Could my life get any worse? The answer was yes. Sitting me down at the dining table, Lisa immediately explained the problem. "David, I want to have a baby." I know, needless to say, I was confused, but now you all understand that this is my normal state of mind when I live with these 2 women. If I had wondered for 1,000 years what they wanted to talk to me about, I would never have guessed that it would be that Lisa wanted to have a child. "I know, I said that I don't want children," Lisa said quietly. "But I see how much fun you have with your children, and I see how much they love you and how much you love them. I want that feeling too. So what should I have said? All I could come up with was, okay. I guess that was the right answer because both women squealed with happiness as they hugged and kissed me, but then Lisa threw it in my face. "Besides, David, Thelma and I have discussed this and we agree that I shouldn't be married to you." Now I was in panic mode. It sounded like these 2 women wanted Lisa to get me pregnant, and then they were planning to kick me to the curb. I knew they had become close, but I never expected them to fall in love with each other and want to get rid of me. "Let me think if I got this right," I said, looking at Lisa. "You want me to get you pregnant, and then you both will kick me to the curb. I don't think I want to be part of this plan. If you want to get rid of me, just tell me and I'll leave quietly. However, if you guys think you can cut me off from my children, I'll fight you tooth and nail." "What?" Thelma's voice rose 3 octaves. No, David. You got it all wrong," Lisa said hastily, her face turning red. "It's my fault. I explained everything wrong." "David, we don't want to get rid of you," Thelma said, rushing to hug me. "I love you with all my soul. It would crush me if you left." "David, I feel the same." Tears flowed down Lisa's cheeks. Well, then I have no idea what you two are talking about, I said irritably. I need a drink. I didn't care if it wasn't on the menu. I think we all need a drink, Lisa said, taking my hand. Once we've all calmed down again, I'll try to better explain what we want to do. But David, I want you to understand that we will respect your decision, whatever it is. Okay, Lisa, I said after finishing my first scotch. Tell me about the baby first. Are you sure you want a baby? This is a radical change for you. Of all the things these women discussed before our agreement, having another child was not one of them. But after Thelma and I saw how much fun our kids were having, it must have started to set Lisa's biological clock in motion. After some time, the desire to have my own child became irresistible. This new wrinkle required a change in the agreement to allow Lisa to give birth to me more often, especially when she thought she might be fertile. I thought Tim would choke to death when we told him about the latest modification to the agreement we needed. He kept telling me how much he hated me until I reminded him what it was like to have a newborn. After this, 4 months passed, but eventually Lisa became pregnant and gave birth to a beautiful little girl, Charlotte. She has her mother's eyes and my smile. Thelma and the kids adore her. As for the supposed divorce, it was another chapter in my crazy married life. When Lisa talked about not being married to me, it was just another piece of craziness in our ever-changing agreement. Specifically, Lisa didn't talk about us getting divorced immediately, and she didn't talk about us staying divorced. In one of their many conversations, Thelma noted that she was worried that her children would face judgment because they were born out of wedlock. Lisa agreed with her and offered a solution. Remember, Lisa has a lot of money, and money can buy almost anything. The new agreement required me to divorce Lisa after the birth of our child. Then I was supposed to marry Thelma, but Lisa was going to change the documents to show that we were married at the time our children were born. Then Thelma and I would divorce, and I would remarry Lisa. If you're confused, think about how I feel. Some of you are no doubt thinking about the money part of a prenuptial agreement. To be honest, it never occurred to me, but it did to Lisa. She wrote the agreement so that the change in status would not invalidate the original agreement. But by that time, I no longer cared about money. The original agreement promised me at least $5 million, and over the years I invested wisely and saved another $6 million. However, it was nice to know that Lisa had my best interest at heart. Shortly after Charlotte was born, I signed divorce papers and married Thelma. I don't know how Lisa did it, but she had a marriage license and the records were changed to reflect my intended marriage to Thelma. I asked Lisa why she didn't just change the records without the marriage ceremony. I was told it was a woman's business, so I kept quiet about it. I stayed married to Thelma for a year, then got divorced and remarried Lisa. A year later, I divorced Lisa and married Thelma. Don't ask me to explain why, they simply told me that they both liked being legally married to me. The only downside to Lisa having a baby was that Lisa's parents now wanted to visit more often to see their new grandson. This put a real kink in our living arrangement, and I was pretty sure Lisa's parents weren't buying the story Lisa was telling them about keeping her administrative assistant on hand. Besides, I caught them looking at me when they thought I wouldn't notice. Lisa's mother had an admiring look, and her father looked at me with pure envy. You're probably wondering what the kids thought of this blended family. They obviously didn't think anything of it while they were young, but as they grew older, they were told that their mothers were very good friends, and I was married to each of them at different times. They left everything else pretty vague. When the children become teenagers, I have no doubt that they will understand that our family is not normal. Tim calls me about once every 2 months to get the latest news. I think he lives them vicariously through me. I know this whole situation is completely confusing, but I love my children and my wives. Thank God we have enough money to make it all work. As I said at the beginning, my life is completely screwed up, but it's screwed up in a very good way. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.